If you're a kid out there that feels like maybe you're broken somehow, like the world would be better off without you in it, I promise you, it's the world that's broken, not you.
Hey guys, Pete here. Today I'll be talking about For All Mankind Season 3 Episode 6, which slowed things down some, but I don't think it was necessarily a bad thing. In New Eden, the race to get to Mars is over, and now everyone is facing brand new challenges trying to survive, while they try and fail to play nice with each other. Larry may be shooting up the charts to overtake Danny as the character that fans are the most angry at, but I don't know, Danny doesn't look like he'll go down without a fight. This episode also emphasizes the fact that just because things are more optimistic in this timeline, continuing the space race doesn't result in a utopia. This reality is still filled with humans and all that goes along with that. I'll be getting into everything that happened and what I think about it right after I tell you that this video will contain spoilers. If you haven't watched the 6th episode of For All Mankind's 3rd season yet, then this video won't be for you. And with that out of the way, let's get into it. Any landing you can walk away from is a good one. We heard Neil Armstrong say the same thing back in Season 1 when he was the first American to land on the moon. Danielle saying it on Mars is a nice touch that brings up memories of all that's been accomplished in this alternate timeline, but also made me consider how different the situation they're encountering on the Red Planet is. I think they did a good job of doing that with the music too. It reminded me of the old westerns, and when you add some atmosphere and some color, this doesn't feel anything like the moon. 30 years after NASA lost that, their unplanned joint mission with Roscosmos did get to Mars first, but the decision to make the low visibility landing cost them their ship. We watch as Ed and Danny bring the Helios lander down for second place, and the unceremonious way they plant their flag and the look on Ed's face does a great job to show you how they feel about it. There's a nice little news section that lays out all of what's happening now that the race is over. Even though it was technically a tie, the US News considers it a win for the country because it was their ship that got them there. Now there's a race to find water, and Helios has located some small deposits, which is enough for them to start manufacturing their methane fuel. This is now in everyone's interest with Sojourner grounded. Phoenix will be everyone's ride back to Earth, and they need that methane since NASA uses different fuel. Trying to cram 8 people into a hab with only enough provisions for 6 makes things difficult for the joint mission. They need to find water, create their own oxygen, set up their nuclear power generator, grow their own food, and even though this all looks inspiring from back on Earth, tensions are building between the two crews fast. It's cramped, hot, they're rationing water, and the Soviet commander seems committed to challenging Danielle every chance he gets. The one place where there's the opposite of tension is between Kelly and Alexei, but that seems like it's probably going to cause some real problems later. Things are going a little smoother at Helios Base, but Danny is still watching Ed's messages to Karen. He finds out that he was the reason that Ed decided to abort their landing, and that makes things even more uncomfortable between them. As much as I haven't been enjoying this story, I do like how charged this revelation is. It stings because they could have been first if Ed had seen him as a regular astronaut. And now Danny's hearing that this guy who he resents because of Karen thinks of him as a son. This works a little better than Danny just wanting to be with Karen, and Ed is actively making things worse because he's trying to do what he did with Gordo. You can understand why Ed is doing it, but we also know that it's a mistake. We see things start to bubble up when he hurts his hand. He gets an attitude when Ed tries to show concern, and he gets his hands on some Tylenol with codeine that we'll talk about again in a minute. In other not going to end well developments, Margo contacts General Bradford about getting Sergei's family out in exchange for his defection. She doesn't mention him by name, but assures the now chairman of the Joint Chiefs that he'll be a valuable asset to NASA. The mention of Black Ops makes this sound like a very bad idea, but I guess it does make sense given her position. I don't love that it continues to be hard to see how she gets out of this. In fact, I really don't see it happening. And I also didn't love to see Karen go back to Helios at first. We do find out that that was all set in motion by Roscosmos reaching out to her. And since it was satisfying to see her turn the tables some on Dev, I guess that might turn out alright. I just don't see how her wanting to start things from the ground up and being good at it fits in here. Also, I don't know where it's heading, but they've been quietly introducing Dev's partner Richard Hilliard. Last episode, we saw him looking at Dev in Mission Control after they aborted the landing, and here we see that there are some tensions between them because Mars is costing so much money. You get to know the people at Happy Valley Base through a series of TV interviews they're recording. Things get interesting when Will, who's been inspired by their monumental achievement, comes out as gay. I think this works pretty well in that I can see why he did it. When he explains his timing to Danielle, it absolutely makes sense from his perspective. Plus, it's nice to see someone who's awed by this experience of a brand new world. At the same time, it creates problems, so when Danielle doesn't react the way you'd hope she would, that makes sense too. Where it gets ugly is with his old pal Roland, the Soviet defector from last season, who he's been training with for the last couple of years. They've grown close, and now he doesn't want anything to do with him. He goes as far as going to Danielle and trying to get reassigned, which I don't know how he thought that might turn out considering how many people are there. It's not necessarily surprising to see someone have such a negative reaction to homosexuality. It's ridiculous, but there are a lot of backward people out there. Ellen even reminds us in this episode about Deke's negative reaction in season 1. It also wasn't out of the ordinary for people to be irrationally afraid of AIDS in the early years. Though in our timeline, it seems like by 94 that wouldn't fly. Danielle tells him that they all had HIV tests on Earth before they left, but doesn't say, and besides, you can't get AIDS just by being next to someone. I'm not sure if the show is trying to point out something about Roland, or if it's trying to say that progress on people knowing about AIDS is slower in this reality. Either way, his reaction is rough to watch, and Will's announcement puts Ellen in a very difficult spot. On the one hand, Ellen and Larry understand what a psychological toll staying in the closet can take on a person. On the other, doing that has made it possible for them to become the most powerful couple in the world. I suppose the show has made the point that this power has its limits, and we see Larry come up with a version of don't ask, don't tell to temporarily solve their problem at the cost of it not helping Will at all, knowing that he'll be discharged from the army when he returns. What she calls uniforms first is not a perfect solution in any timeline, but it does work for her politically in this one. On a personal level, it's not clear how she'll live with the decision, but that seems primed to take a back seat to the other incoming scandal that we learn about at the end. Karen helps to broker a deal with Roscosmos, who've discovered a large deposit of liquid water. The show never explains why they were able to find this and NASA wasn't, but I guess we're just supposed to accept that. It sets up a situation where Helios and the Soviets team up behind NASA's back because Ed is the one who can get them there. By helping them, Helios will also benefit from this huge discovery. Sergei comes through to tip Margo off about what's going on. It's a cute scene where at first I thought he was betraying her, installing a listening device or something like that, but it turns out that he leaves an equation on her record. When she solves it, she knows what the secret mission is about, and she goes and tells Aleda. She goes straight to tell Danielle, which seemed a little impulsive. They had shown that she was suspicious of the Soviets in Mission Control because of what she knows about the engine, but it was still a little surprising that she just exposed what they were doing like that. I'm not sure if this will come up again later, but I thought it was worth mentioning. Danielle tells everyone else after Ed's well-intentioned Thanksgiving party turns into a brawl, which I guess that always happens no matter where you have one of these things. Will finally calls out Roland for acting weird around him, and they do fight. Danielle finally lets the Soviet commander know what she thinks, and everyone in her crew is pissed about the water. Ed tries to smooth things over with Kelly, and she talks him into bringing her along because she thinks there's a good chance there might be life in that water. Also, when he goes back to his hab, he sends a message to Karen telling her that he's worried about Danny, which of course gets intercepted. So Danny has burnt through his Tylenol with codeine, and he's gone back and got some stronger oxycodone and a little bit of speed to go along with it. They had a conversation where Ed told him that he would change the medical protocol so he could stay on the planet. And this is another example of him bending the rules so he can try to recreate what he did with Gordo. When he's talking to Karen, he tells her that he's worried. And you can imagine how that might sit with the now loaded to the gills Danny, who, when he hears that he thinks that he might not be cut out for this, starts punching the screen. The episode ends with Ellen announcing her new policy. She confirms that it's too late to help Will in his situation. On the news, you see it goes too far for Republicans and not far enough for Democrats, which is something that they expected. Larry's assistant is at a bar talking to another gay friend, or at least someone pretending to be a friend, about this new policy and his relationship with the first gentleman. He mentions that they've had relations in the Oval Office that bring to mind the real-world Monica Lewinsky scandal. On his way out, the friend gets a call and tells the person on the other end that he has to meet him in person to tell him what he just found out. It's not entirely clear if it's his intention, but it looks like he'll end up exposing Larry's secret, and that would put Ellen in an even tougher situation. This was another good episode. Character-wise, it was great. Will went from being the guy who was in the right seat after the disaster to someone who might turn out to be a long-running character you care about. It will depend on what happens in the next 2 years, but I thought the actor did a great job and really appreciated the conversation he had with Danielle, even though no one was satisfied in the end. I like that she says that reconstructing the moral fabric of the universe is not our mission, when it might turn out doing that anyway. As I mentioned while I was going through these things, there were a couple of details in the plot I didn't think added up. It wasn't enough to take me out of it, but I didn't find it as easy to overlook these things as I think they wanted us to. We'll see how it all plays out, though. The Danny and Ed thing got a little more complicated, but I feel like they've passed the point where they really have to come up with something great to make it seem worth it after dragging it out this long. If the payoff falls flat, that'll be a big disappointment. I think it's clear Larry is going to be exposed, but it kind of makes my head spin when I try to think of where it goes from there. They're obviously pulling from real-world events, and Bill Clinton did survive his scandal, but this is a totally different case based on her party affiliation. I mean, right now we don't know of anything that would make her lose the office, but she would become as powerless as it's possible for a president to be. And if her VP's reaction to Will is any indication, her party will be asking her to resign. What I liked about the episode is it gave you a lot to think about, and it really drove home that idea that everyone should be focused on what's going on, the struggle for survival, the opportunity to make something different, but that's not often how things really work. So I'm looking forward to see where we go next, and I think that's a good place to leave things. In the comments, tell me what you thought about New Eden and what you're hoping to see next week. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.